There are now 4,871 confirmed cases of the coronavirus across the African continent, with many countries imposing a range of prevention and containment measures against the spread of the pandemic. The whole of Africa has rising cases, with a handful of countries still managing to keep their infection rates down. To discuss this, we're joined in the studio by SABC Foreign editor Sophie Mokoena. So we've just seen from our reporters in Kenya and Ethiopia and Nigeria. So what is the general picture? Just which region has the worst numbers?
Well, clearly it's the SADC region because of South Africa. You know, as we speak, South Africa stands at 1,280 cases that have been confirmed as positive. We are expecting later today, the minister to release the numbers. But currently, South Africa is the epicenter of the virus. Gauteng in particular as a province, and Johannesburg, Sandton in particular. When you look at the metro, that's where you have this problem. It is no surprise that currently we're talking about Alexander that has been affected, but only 2 people for now because of the proximity with Sandton. The issue that the Minister of Defense had indicated earlier on, that the fear is that you have Sandton being the epicenter right now, and the fear is that this will move to Alexander and it will be a catastrophe. You have a situation where in the North Africa, that is not the northern region, it's Egypt, it's still Egypt at 609 cases. And then, of course, when you go to the West Africa, you then have Burkina Faso with 222 cases. The funny thing is that you have Nigeria with that population of more than 200 million people, but they still have 111 cases. When you go to East Africa, you have Rwanda with 70 cases, but very close is Kenya. And that is why the region today, they did have a teleconference where ministers of health had a discussion. This emanates from what the leaders of the assembly of the AU had discussed. You'd recall that President Ramaphosa, as the chair of the AU, interacted with his counterpart. That is the assembly, the 5 leaders, one from Mali, one from Kenya, the former AU chair, the president of Egypt, President Ramaphosa himself, and the commissioner, Faki, discussing the fact that all the regions must establish their own regional centers and they must start engaging. And we saw East Africa doing that. And of course, Southern Africa, it is South Africa, 1,280 cases.
I want to talk about the East African region. As you mentioned, Rwanda has the highest number between itself and Kenya at 70, but we still haven't seen any deaths in Rwanda. Is that because of the stringent measures that it has put in place? And how does that compare with other African countries? What containment or lockdown measures have they put in place?
Rwanda, the person who's leading this whole campaign is the vice president, and or the prime minister is leading this. And he has taken measures as a person with experience. He's a medical doctor, to go on a rigorous testing of people, so that you know exactly the extent in which your population is affected, and therefore you come with measures or steps to deal with that. You start to request people to isolate, and you also embark on quarantine processes for those who have been perhaps refusing to do what they are supposed to do and force quarantine. And they've taken a measure similar to what China did. It works for Rwanda because Rwanda, they are used to almost like a military government, precision and instructions, and no one defies the president there. And therefore it's working. But when you go to other countries where there's some lax, or perhaps one can say there's a more democratic means to do things, you find a situation where people are not complying. A case in point, South Africa, people are talking about their rights to do this and that, enshrined in the constitution, and therefore it's very difficult to enforce measures. And others complaining that the security cluster is enforcing these laws in a way that they are not supposed to conduct themselves. But in Rwanda, no one can question Paul Kagame.
I'm afraid we're going to have to end it there. SABC Foreign editor Sophie Mokoena.